like to welcome Mr. Rod Broadhead for this teacher feature. I've known Rod for quite a few years. He's unique because his grandfather in 1990, who was the principal at Pineview High School at that time, his grandfather did a lot of different things in education, but he hired me as the head wrestling coach and an English teacher. And I am so grateful for Mr. Broadhead for the time that he's taken with my students at formerly Dixie State University and now Utah Tech University to go visit his school as part of their Education 1010 observation. They absolutely love Mr. Broadhead and they love his school. It didn't matter whether he was at Sandstone or here at Desert Canyon Elementary. But Mr. Broadhead, welcome. And I know that you're going to be bombarded here shortly when the bell rings. And all your teachers and students and their parents do what they do every day, and you're so good at it. But I want to ask you to start off here, why did you become a teacher, an elementary teacher, and then a principal?
Yeah, great question. And thank you for all those kind words. And we love having the Education 1010 students here. It's always been my goal to get as many prospective teachers in my building as possible, because I think we do it the right way and I think we have fun with it. So thank you. And to answer that first question, why did I become a teacher? It goes back to my grandfather, and not quite 30 years ago, but it was probably the year 2001. I knew I wanted to work with youth. I knew I probably wanted to focus on teenagers that were really struggling, maybe drug addiction, maybe just a lot of mental health, although back in the early 2000s, we never talked about mental health much. But I knew that's the direction I wanted to go, was helping young people overcome challenges. And I happened to live with my grandfather that you mentioned, that had been an administrator and assistant principal of some sort or another for almost 30 years. And me and him were sitting on his front porch, and he was asking me what I want to do with my life. And I told him I want to work with young people to help them overcome challenges, because I felt like I'd overcome some pretty good obstacles in my life as a teenager. And in that conversation, he said, "Have you ever thought about being a teacher?" And I said, "Well, no, I haven't. And I don't want to think about that either. That's not, I want to be a private therapist or something along those lines." Well, he put the seed there. And when you plant a seed, it either dies or it grows. And since I was taking a lot of, classes at the university at the time, I was taking psychology and different things, that plant started to grow. And I decided, yeah, you know what, I do want to be a teacher. I do think I can influence young people the way I'd like to. And I originally set off to be a secondary teacher. I wanted to teach in high school and coach and all the things you did. And somewhere along the line, I don't remember where, I wish I could remember where, but I thought, you know what, I probably could have more influence and more impact if I went down to a younger student, elementary age, maybe 4th, 5th grade. And so kind of the rest is history. I got accepted into Dixie State University's elementary ed program and became a teacher. So,
and ultimately a principal.
Yeah, and the principal thing had a lot to do again with my grandfather. He was my principal at Pineview High School, and he just did it so well. Everybody loved him. He was in the hallways high-fiving kids, motivating people. I don't know how he interacted with teachers. I didn't see that side of it, but from a lot of things I've heard, yeah, I've heard he motivated teachers, helped them want to be better, encouraged them. And I guess I recognize I can be a teacher for 30 years and that would be wonderful. And I'll influence 25 kids every single year. But then again, those conversations with my grandfather was, as a principal, you have more influence and you can influence, instead of just 25 kids, if you're the principal of an elementary school, you can influence 500 children in a year. And so it's more about impact and influence, and you can if you do it right, you can spread your influence to more children and try and help more. So that's eventually why.
You do that so well.
I certainly try. Thank you.
Well, that's one of your incredible qualities is that I don't think I've ever seen any administrator, our former superintendent, he knew a lot of people, but pretty much every one of your students, their parents, by name. And it's incredible. Just that one thing that you do, it has such a huge impact on their lives. And I know that that's one thing that my students always comment on about you. And that's the first thing that you do with them is you get to know them. And I know because you are my grandchild's principal,
Yeah.
and my son and his wife obviously are a part, these families are a part of your job. And it's such an important part, and you play such an important role outside of the school. It's amazing how this overlaps into the family. And I can guarantee that you've had that impact squared that you ever could imagine on your students. But I think when I look at you, I think of your grandfather and his energy. He had just tremendous energy, and he
Yeah,
was always going.
you have to have a lot of energy for this. I think that's why my voice is a little bit like this, because you just, as a teacher, principal, yeah, you need to take sick days when you really need them. But a lot of times, I mean, I've been battling this cold for a week, and you just keep rolling, and you got to have the energy. And when you talk a lot, when you're constantly with kids and talking with kids and in the lunchroom, it takes a toll on your.
Well, in the lunchroom and on the roof of the school, dropping eggs, and for the egg
Yep.
drop the other day, and I heard all
Last
about
week
that.
was the egg drop. Yep, that was great.
That's just awesome. So what do you in your mind what do you think makes you a good teacher and a good principal?
Well, I don't know how good I was as a teacher, but I think one thing I really cared about was relationships. And with my students, I think relationships are everything. I think you can get with a great relationship with a child, you can get them to do a lot of things. And learning is really what we're about in a school, and you can help them really learn. You'll get children that come in. Some children come in really high already, and they know what they're doing, and they can read fluently. And with a great relationship, you can push them further. And then you get your children on the other end of the spectrum, who come in and they don't understand why they should be at school, and their home life is a real struggle, and maybe their parents have split up, and maybe it's happened a couple times, and maybe they only live with a mother or a father. And I can relate to that. And again, that was why I wanted to get into this. My sweet mom, which is a wonderful lady, she was divorced twice by the time I was 15. And so I'd grown up living with grandparents a couple of times. And so I really understood what a lot of these children were going through. And divorce doesn't just affect, it affects affluent children and children in poverty, everybody. And so really, if you can build relationships with kids, because they're going through a lot of things. And as a classroom teacher, you're not necessarily digging into all their personal life, but you're going to learn about it. They're going to bring it, and they're going to tell you. And when they come to school sad or crazy happy, you're asking why. I mean, the kid comes to school just bouncing off the walls. You're like, hey, what's going on? What's happening? And you find out, oh, they're going to Disneyland, or, oh, it's their birthday coming up, or, oh, grandma and grandpa are coming tonight. So they're way excited. Or again, the other end of the spectrum, they come to school and they're sad, or they're angry, or they're mean, or they're bouncing off the walls. All of these things can happen. You're like, hey, what's going on? Got a lot of energy today. Or I can see you're really sad, or you're kind of angry. You find out, oh, well, maybe mom and dad got in a fight last night, or maybe they haven't seen their dad for a few weeks, or their mom, and they're really missing them. And all of these different scenarios come into play, but you can't work with them without a relationship. So really good teachers build really good relationships, really strong relationships.
I know that you get good teachers because of that, and it's because of that philosophy. The teachers that I know that you have some of the best teachers in the school district.
I agree. And as a principal, so like that's teaching. And I think a great teacher is someone that builds relationships. I think a great principal builds relationships with again, and it's a little more challenging as a principal because you've got, like I got 550 students, excuse me, and along with 550 students comes a couple hundred families. And it's important for me to build relationships with all those students and all those families. But then, like, before I can do that, I have to have great relationships with my teachers to where they trust me and I trust them. And we put a lot of effort into relationships with all the adults that work in the building. And I mean, that's secretaries, custodians, lunch cooks, all of our paraprofessionals. Like, I do everything I can to truly get to know who they are, who their families are, their children, or maybe they're not married, don't have children, but what do they do? What do they like in life? And when people, I guess when people care, you really care about who they are and not just what kind of job they're doing, they tend to do, I feel like they work a little harder because they recognize this is a place where people care about each other. And if Mr. Broadhead cares about all these people that much, then I guess, you kind of set the example, then they start caring about all the people they're working with and you know, it spreads, it's contagious, a good attitude and caring is contagious. And I feel like my school, if you could poll most of my teachers, like what's the glue that keeps this place together? I would bet 9 out of 10, hopefully 10 out of 10 or whatever. Or what do we got? About 60 people that work in this building. Hopefully 60 out of 60 people would say, well, it's probably the relationships. People like each other around here. People care around here. And then again, all of us adults care. And then that spreads till we care about the kids and the family. So
no question. And so
I think that's what makes great schools is great relationships.
Perfect. So going into the next question here, and we kind of got that out of some of your answers to the first two questions, but what's your favorite part about what you do, about being a teacher, being a principal? What is your favorite part of your day?
Yeah, okay. So there's my favorite part of my job and then favorite part of my day. I do really enjoy walking into the building and just seeing people right out of the gate. Like, because I just like we talked about all these students that come to school and they're bouncing off the walls sometimes or setting or mad. Like, I'm a human. Like, I've got my own family at home, and maybe sometimes my own child leaves the school angry, right? Because kids, when they're teenagers, they have all kinds of emotions, and maybe sometimes I leave my house not feeling great and maybe a little down about something. And I tell you what, I walk in the building and start seeing all these wonderful people that work here with me, and I just instantly get energy, right? And so I love coming in the building and seeing all the people. And I hope to see every single person that works in the building every single day, because that's where I get my energy. When I see their smiling faces, and I go, okay, they came with their A game. I better get my A game on. That's one of my favorite parts about it. And then, the kids get here and it's the same. Again, it's just that other level. Like, I love being with the adults and seeing them. And then all of a sudden the kids show up an hour later. And again, they're bouncing off the walls. They have energy and it builds. So that's what I really, really love, is just seeing everybody. And again, that goes back to what I talked to in the last questions. It's just more relationships. I love when I just got done 3 weeks ago meeting with every third and fourth and fifth grader in the school. We did groups of like 15 kids together. And I just taught them a concept that goes along with our school motto: aviate, navigate, communicate. We just worked through a little concept of something I thought that they could take that little nugget and they could apply it today to their life and today to their school, but they also could apply it forever. Like, it's a principle that lasts forever in any situation. So I still love teaching the kids. And I know it's so cliche to hear, oh, I just love when that light goes on, or you see that in their eye and they learn something. But there's so much truth that I like when I see kids and there's something I taught them, and then I see them in the hallway or in the lunchroom, usually lunchroom where I interact with most of the students, and they bring up what I taught them, and I ask them, well, how have you applied that? And then they mention a few things. All of a sudden it's like, okay, this is why I do this. It matters. You can have influence, so I guess there you go. That's my favorite part, is that going back to influence and relationships. So,
and it's interesting because those relationships that you build, and I'm sure you have kids come back or you run into them in Publix somewhere down the road, and you probably remember who they are because you learned their name, and they say, you remember me? And there's nothing better than that. It's even today, and it kind of relates to you because your grandfather was, I believe he was the principal at Dixie Middle School or Dixie Junior High.
Yeah.
When they asked me right after my senior year, I was still a senior in high school, to coach the Dixie Junior High wrestling team. And my wife today called me, and she was in the bank, and she says, "Did you know so and so?" And I didn't ring a bell, but she said, "This man said that you were his junior high wrestling coach." Well, I only coached one time in junior high, and that was for your grandfather at Dixie Junior High. And she went on to say how I had affected this young man, and I in a positive way. And you don't think about, like you're saying, these relationships that you build, they last forever.
They
And
do.
that to me is definitely one of the greatest things about teaching. We'll get to the last question here and cut you loose, but now knowing what you know after all of your years of experience, what would you do differently, or what advice would you give to new teachers that are pursuing a career in education? What bit of advice would you tell them at this point in the process?
Yeah, and advice. Oh man, I got lots of advice, but I got to try and really trim it down into something that's important. I would say it's really important. And I hate to go right back to relationships, but that's part of it. And I've already spoken enough. No one needs to know more about relationships. You know that that's important. But I think it's really important as a teacher, especially a young teacher going in, is to probably this is something if I could go back and talk to myself in my beginning teacher years, almost 20 years ago, I think I would have given myself more grace a little bit. Like, I wanted to be perfect. I wanted every lesson to be perfect. I wanted every interaction to be perfect. I just had this idea that I was supposed to be perfect. I thought, well, they hired me because they thought I knew everything. Otherwise, they wouldn't have hired me. And so I was always nervous to ask for help when I knew I needed it, because I thought, oh, they're gonna find out I'm an imposter. If you've ever heard of an imposter syndrome, where we're all imposters in some way or another. But I didn't ask for help in the beginning when I was teaching. I just suffered, like management's difficult. Learning how to manage students, even if you have great relationships, you still have to learn good management. And so I was struggling with management. I had great relationships with kids, but that didn't mean they listened to everything I said, and it didn't mean they listened as soon as I said it. And so sometimes my class felt too wild and out of control, and I was frustrated. I'm like, why won't they just listen to me? They know I care about them, and I think they care about me. And I wish I would have reached out to some experienced teachers and said, I need a little help here. I noticed that you have a well-managed classroom. Could you give me some hints? Could I come watch you? Could you come watch me? I wish I would have reached out. And I think what most all teachers are going to find in those beginning years of teaching is that everybody wants to help, but sometimes they just don't know that you need to help, or they don't know how to bring it up to you that, hey, I noticed this, because they don't want to offend you. So that's probably my biggest piece of advice to young teachers is ask for help. And I guess for teachers that are considering the profession still, or in the program, which this education 1010 classes, I think, is that what we're talking about? Is education 1010 now? So a lot of you are like in that middle. Is this really what I want to do? And I think maybe the same thing. Just go talk to a lot of teachers, talk to a lot of people in the profession, see if you can go watch classes. We love having the kids come over and watch, but ask lots of questions about things you're concerned about or aren't sure about. And people will give you the answers. And then once you've decided that this is what you want to do, and you know that you want to have impact and influence, once you've decided that, then just jump in head first. Don't be scared of anything, volunteer at schools, even start doing substitute teaching. That'll teach you a whole lot. It might scare you away a little bit, but you'll learn a lot about management. You'll learn so much about so many things. So I guess my advice to to anyone. I guess we don't just get young kids wanting to be teachers. We get a lot of people that raise their children and then they decide they want to go teach. So I'd say just, hey, if you're ready to be a teacher and know you want to have impact on people's lives that are going to help the world become a better place, just jump in head first. Just go all in. Just go all in on it, and you'll learn a lot. And you'll find out there's a ton of caring people that are willing to help you everywhere. So I guess that's my advice. I don't know if that was what you're looking
I
for.
know I've heard, I've kind of heard that thread. Had a couple other interviews today, and one of them was how they would embrace collaboration. It's kind of the same idea, how that was kind of foisted upon us. I don't know how many years ago, and there was a lot of tentativeness about embracing that, but there's not a better thing in the world. It's just to talk with your peers and ask them what works. I think you're exactly spot on. I think that makes us better people when we know that we aren't perfect and that we need to reach out to these people that have had this experience that can help us. And we borrow everything in teaching, and I think the more that we can watch each other, we'll be better off for it. But I just want to tell you that, and I'll say it again, that you're just a huge part of what we do at the university with these new teachers, and you've made an impact on them. And I just thank you so much for this opportunity to talk with you today. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.